Growing up in the Martinez family meant one thing: living up to a very specific version of success. My sister Elena was the golden child, ticking every box on my parents' checklist: prestigious law degree, high-powered career, and an engagement to a surgeon who looked like he stepped out of a medical drama. Meanwhile, I spent my teenage nights perfecting recipes in the cramped kitchen of our modest home. "Stop wasting time with flour, Isabella," Mom would sigh, eyeing the mess I made with my experiments. "You're smart enough to do something real with your life." What they dismissed as a childish hobby eventually grew into Sweet Success Bakeries, a business now worth $2 million. Yet even that wasn't enough for my family, especially not for Elena, who never let me forget I was the less accomplished sister. Everything came to a head at her wedding, the day she made the biggest mistake of her life by trying to take what was mine. Let me take you back to where it all began. I'm Isabella Martinez, the black sheep in a family that worshipped corporate titles and Ivy League diplomas. My parents, a corporate tax attorney and a hospital administrator, believed they were building a legacy of success. And Elena, ever the overachiever, fulfilled their every expectation with gusto. Me, I didn't fit the mold. My real passion started when I inherited Abuelo Miguel's recipe book. He had run a small panaderia in Mexico City before immigrating to the U.S., and that worn leather book, filled with his careful handwriting and notes, became my sanctuary. While Elena was acing debate competitions and prepping for law school, I was sneaking into the kitchen at 2 a.m., covered in flour, experimenting with his recipes. "Isabella, mija," Mom would say, shaking her head in exasperation. "You're too smart for this. You could be a doctor. Stop acting like we're still in the old country." Elena, with her razor-sharp tongue, was worse. "Still playing Baker, Bella? Some of us are building real futures." But I saw something they didn't. The same way they analyzed stocks and promotions, I saw potential in profit margins and scaling recipes. By senior year of high school, I was selling pastries at local farmers markets, saving every dollar I earned, $15,000 by the time I graduated. The day I told my family I was skipping college to open a bakery was like setting off a bomb. "No daughter of mine is throwing away her future to bake," Dad bellowed, his voice shaking with fury. Elena, home for summer break from Stanford Law, just laughed. "Let her fail, Peppy. Maybe then she'll grow up." Ignoring their protests, I poured my savings and a small business loan into a dingy storefront. Sweet Success Bakery opened with me, 2 ovens, and my grandfather's recipes. The first year was brutal -20-hour days, endless mistakes, and many nights spent sleeping on a cot in the back. My family? They barely acknowledged my existence. Elena, now working at a top law firm, would occasionally drop by with her friends, treating me like a quaint side project. "This is my little sister's bakery," she'd say, her voice dripping with condescension. "Isn't it cute?" What she didn't notice or refused to see was how fast my cute hobby was growing. By year 3, I had 3 locations and a loyal following thanks to a glowing review from a local food critic and my knack for blending Mexican flavors with modern pastry trends. Still, at family gatherings, my success was brushed aside. Mom would gush about Elena's courtroom victories or her fiancé James while dismissing my bakeries as a passing phase. When Elena got engaged, she planned the kind of wedding that would dominate society pages. Every detail had to scream perfection, from the imported roses to the designer dress. Then she dropped the bombshell. "Bella," she began at dinner one night, her tone syrupy sweet, "I want you to handle the wedding desserts. Pro bono, of course. For family." I almost laughed. "Pro bono? Elena, that's a $15,000 order." She waved a hand like it was nothing. "Come on, it's not like you're running a real business. This will be great exposure for you. Think of all the important people who'll be there." Dad chimed in, his voice heavy with authority. "Your sister's right, Isabella. This is an incredible opportunity for you." I set my fork down carefully. My business cleared $800,000 in profit last year. I don't need exposure. I need respect. The table fell silent. For the first time, I saw the mask slip from Elena's face, her perfect smile replaced by something darker. "Fine," she said tightly. "I'll pay, but I want everything flawless." I should have known then that Elena wasn't finished. Over the next few weeks, she began showing up at my bakery daily, asking questions, taking photos, and hovering as I worked on her massive order: a 7-tier cake, 500 cupcakes, custom cookies, and a dessert bar. Just curious about how you've built all this, she said with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. The night before the wedding, as I was putting the final touches on her cake, she appeared in my kitchen. You know, Bella, she said, running a finger along the counter, I've been thinking, sweet success has potential. It just needs direction. I frowned. What are you talking about? Her smile widened, but it wasn't friendly. You'll see tomorrow. Just remember, everything I do is for this family. The next morning, as I supervised the delivery vans, my phone buzzed with a text. Hope you're ready for your big surprise, little sister. Time to see what sweet success can really become. I stared at the message, my stomach twisting. What I didn't know was that Elena had been plotting for months. Her wedding wasn't just a celebration. It was a coup, and I was the target. The morning of Elena's wedding was picture perfect, with sunlight streaming through the windows as if the universe itself were smiling down on her big day. I'd been awake since 3 a.m., putting the final touches on the 7-tier masterpiece that would dominate the reception at the Grand Plaza Hotel. It wasn't just a cake. It was my statement, my proof that sweet success wasn't just a hobby. What I didn't know was that Elena had her own grand reveal planned. I arrived at the hotel's opulent ballroom at 10 a.m. The space buzzed with energy. Florists arranging towering centerpieces, staff meticulously setting tables under glittering chandeliers, and planners barking orders. My team and I worked carefully to assemble the towering cake, every detail reflecting my commitment to excellence. But something felt off. As we worked, I noticed strangers lurking near my setup. They weren't admiring the cake, they were taking photos of my team, our process, even my equipment. Who are they? I asked one of the wedding planners, nodding toward the strangers. She barely glanced up. Oh, they're with the bride's legal team. Documentation for the event or something. Legal team? At a wedding. Before I could press further, my mother appeared, resplendent in her mother of the bride gown. She wore the kind of forced smile she always used when she was about to deliver unwelcome news. Elena wants to see you, Maija, she said. She's in the bridal suite. I found Elena in her private room, surrounded by her bridesmaids. She was a vision in her designer gown, radiating the kind of effortless perfection that had always eluded me. Bella, she chirped, dismissing her entourage with a wave. Just the person I needed. Close the door. Her cheerful demeanor evaporated as soon as we were alone. She reached into her bag and pulled out a sleek folder, her expression calculating. I have a proposition for you, she began, smoothing the fabric of her veil. One that benefits everyone. I folded my arms. What is this about? Sweet success, she said, placing the folder on the table. James and I, along with some investors, want to acquire controlling interest in your company. We'll take it national, scale it up into something real. I blinked, stunned. You're serious? You want to buy my company on your wedding day? Bella, be reasonable. You've done well, surprisingly well, but let's face it, you've hit your ceiling. You don't have the education, connections, or experience to take it further. With my business acumen and James's family ties. Stop, I cut her off, my voice cold. Sweet success isn't for sale. Her polished smile faltered, replaced by a steely glint in her eyes. I thought you might say that, which is why I took precautions. She slid the folder across the table. Inside were photos of my kitchen, my team, my recipes, and pages of notes detailing every aspect of my business operations. What is this? Leverage, she replied smoothly. Did you know some of your processes toe the line of health code compliance? Or that a savvy lawyer could uncover labor violations in your employee contracts? Nothing major, of course, but enough to cause problems. Problems that could ruin your reputation. I stared at her, my hands trembling. You're blackmailing me? Don't be so dramatic, she said, her tone condescending. I'm offering you a chance to be part of something bigger. Sign the agreement and you'll still have a stake. Refuse and, well, let's just say the health department will be very interested in sweet success come Monday. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. She wasn't just trying to take my company, she was trying to destroy me. I finally found my voice. No. Her smile vanished completely. Think carefully, Bella. This isn't just about you. It's about the family. Do you really want to embarrass us all by clinging to your little hobby? I'd rather fail on my own terms than succeed on yours. I turned and walked out, leaving her gaping behind me. The hours that followed were a blur. I watched Elena glide down the aisle, exchange vows, and bask in the adoration of her guests. All while my phone buzzed incessantly with texts from her legal team. Each message was another nudge towards signing away my business. When it came time for the cake cutting, the tension in the air was palpable. Guests gathered around as Elena and James approached the towering dessert. Cameras flashed and the room buzzed with anticipation. Elena lifted the knife, her smile triumphant. "Wait," I called out, my voice slicing through the chatter. The room fell silent. Elena froze, the knife hovering midair. "Bella," my mother hissed, "what are you doing?" I stepped forward, my heart pounding. Pulling out my phone, I tapped play on a recording. Elena's voice filled the ballroom, detailing her plan to blackmail me into selling sweet success. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Elena's face turned ashen. "You recorded me," she whispered, her voice trembling. I met her gaze, unflinching. "I learned from the best, didn't I? Always document everything." The murmurs swelled into outright shock. James's parents looked horrified. Her law firm colleagues exchanged uneasy glances. "But that's not all," I said, turning to address the crowd. Elena thought she could destroy my business because she didn't see it as legitimate. What she didn't realize is that Sweet Success has already signed a deal with Whole Foods. National distribution starts next month. I let the weight of my words sink in. "So no, Elena, my bakery isn't a hobby. It's a legacy. And I won't let you or anyone else take it from me." Elena lunged toward me, but James caught her arm, his face pale. "Stop," he hissed. "You've done enough." The room erupted in whispers. For the first time, Elena's perfect image was shattered, her carefully curated life exposed for what it truly was, a facade built on manipulation. And as I stood there, under the glittering chandeliers, I realized I'd finally proven myself. Not just to my family, but to everyone. Sweet Success wasn't just my business, it was my victory. The weeks after Elena's wedding were pure chaos. Somehow, a guest at the reception had recorded my confrontation with her, and the video quickly made the rounds in our local business community. Elena's audacious attempt at a hostile takeover wasn't just family drama anymore. It became a cautionary tale about ethics, ambition, and crossing the wrong sibling. Her law firm put her on indefinite leave pending an ethics investigation, and James postponed their honeymoon to focus on salvaging his family's reputation. But the biggest fallout was within our family. The Sunday after the wedding, Mom called for a family meeting at their house. I almost didn't go, but the tremor in her voice convinced me otherwise. When I arrived, the living room felt heavy with unspoken tension. Dad sat in his usual armchair, looking like he aged a decade in a week. Mom clutched her rosary, her eyes red from crying. Elena and James were perched stiffly on the love seat, their once perfect partnership showing visible cracks. Mom patted the seat next to her on the couch. "Siente, Isabella," she said softly. For once, you didn't comment on my flour-dusted jeans or the ever-present scent of vanilla clinging to my clothes. Before I could sit, Elena opened her mouth to speak, but Dad raised a hand, silencing her. "No, Lena, you've said enough." He turned to me, his eyes filled with something I hadn't seen before, regret. "Maja, your mother and I, we owe you an apology." I froze. Dad had spent years dismissing my dream, brushing off my achievements as cute or temporary. An apology from him was as unexpected as it was overwhelming. "Last night, I couldn't sleep," he continued. "I kept thinking about your abuelo, my father. He came to this country with nothing but a recipe book and a dream. He worked in other people's bakeries for 20 years, saving every penny. But he never got the chance to open his own. And here you are, living his dream, building something extraordinary. And we," his voice cracked, "we were too blind to see it." Mom reached for my hand, her fingers trembling. "We were wrong, Isabella. So wrong. We thought success had to look a certain way, but you showed us different." I pulled out my phone, swiping to the latest Sweet Success projections. "This is what success looks like," I said, my voice steady. "We're on track to hit $5 million in revenue next year. That's not a hobby. That's not luck. That's business." Elena, who had been uncharacteristically silent, suddenly stood. "I need to say something." Her voice wavered, and for the first time she looked small. No sharp comebacks, no polished poise. "What I did, I was jealous." "Jealous?" I asked, incredulous. "Of what?" "You've always had everything you wanted. Have I? She sank back onto the love seat, her shoulders slumping. I have a career I hate, a reputation in shambles, and a marriage that's barely holding together because of my own mistakes. Meanwhile, she gestured helplessly. You're happy, you've built something real. I watch you in your bakery with your team creating things that bring people joy. When was the last time I brought anyone joy? The room fell silent, broken only by the faint toll of church bells outside. For a moment, I thought about Abuela's recipe book, his notes about family, resilience, and second chances. Elena was many things, but she was still my sister. You know, I said slowly, Sweet Success is expanding. We're going national, which means we need someone to manage our legal department. Someone who knows the ins and outs of contracts, compliance, and corporate law. Elena blinked at me in disbelief. What are you saying? I'm saying you're still a damn good lawyer when you're not plotting hostile takeovers. But if you want the job, there's one condition. What condition? She asked cautiously. You start in the kitchen. 3 months, no shortcuts, no special treatment. Learn the business from the ground up. Elena looked at me, then at her manicured hands, then back at me. Slowly, a real smile, one I hadn't seen in years, spread across her face. When do I start? 6 months later, Sweet Success was thriving in more ways than I could have imagined. Elena had surprised everyone, throwing herself into the business with the same intensity she'd once reserved for her courtroom battles. She mastered every aspect of bakery operations, from perfecting the art of laminating dough to managing supplier contracts. Last week, she even negotiated our first international distribution deal, proving her legal skills could be an incredible asset when paired with real knowledge of the business. Mom and Dad had changed too. Dad helped secure financing for our latest expansion, using his network of contacts to open doors instead of casting judgment. Mom proudly told everyone about her daughter's company, from my sales milestones to Elena's surprising pivot into baking. As for me, Sweet Success opened its 15th location last month. Abuela's recipe book now hangs in our flagship store, framed alongside a photo of him standing proudly in front of his panaderia in Mexico City. Sometimes when I'm testing new recipes late at night, I feel his presence as if he's smiling at how far we've come. Yesterday, Elena brought me her latest attempt at Abuela's tres leches cake. It was a little lopsided and slightly overbaked, but she'd made it herself from scratch. Not perfect, she said, nervously watching me take a bite. I smiled, thinking of all the burnt loaves and failed batches that had led me here. Perfect is overrated, sis. What matters is that you're trying. We sat together in my office, sharing her imperfect cake and planning our company's future. On my desk was a new photo, one from Elena's wedding, capturing the moment when everything fell apart and somehow came back together stronger. Sometimes success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about giving them the chance to prove themselves right.